The month of July has come to an end, so it is time for another monthly recap. The July recap, to be specific, as at the end of July, the Atlanta Braves are sitting at 49-56 on the season. That is 15 games out of first place in the NL East. The record has really started to come around to where I expected it to be. Now, granted, probably a lot of that is because of the trades, and these guys are still developing and they're younger guys, but I mean, I was expecting that. We're not expecting to win the World Series this season. We're not even expecting to make the playoffs this season. I wouldn't expect the World Series next season either. But I mean, you never know, we could pull out our asses. But this is a team we're in the process of retooling our lineup. There's a couple of guys who will be here in the lineup next year, and then just a lot of turnover into the lineup next year, but we'll get into that more as we go into these trades. So the first trade that we are going to go over in the month of July is the trade where we sent Jaime Garcia and AAA starting pitcher Daniel Winkler to the Houston Astros in return for Teoscar Hernandez and Marwin Gonzalez, nicknamed Margot. So Teoscar Hernandez is a 69 overall, B potential. He can play all the outfield positions. He's a good fielder. He's got good speed. He's a contact hitter. He's basically a good guy who I think could play right field every day for us next season. His vision is a bit suspect, but I think he could get over that. He's still a B potential. He's still young. He's 69 overall. He's still going to keep developing, so we'll see how he goes in the major leagues here next year, because he's going to finish out the year as our everyday right fielder, and basically, he's playing for his starting job next year. If he plays well the rest of the season as an everyday right fielder, he's probably going to be the right fielder next season, heading into 2018. Marwin Gonzalez is a guy who is an interesting pickup in that trade. He's on a 1 year, he's on 1 year left in his contract, so if we do want him back, we're going to have to re-sign him, and I might sign him back, I might not, because we do have a lot of utility guys. Adonis Garcia, he's still under team control. He's going to be back next season because we did not trade him. Sean Rodriguez, who's missed this entire season so far with an injury that he suffered before the season, he's going to be back next season as well, and he's a good player. He's a utility guy. He's a lot better ratings, I believe, than Marwin Gonzalez as well, but I mean, Marwin Gonzalez is a good player, so we could possibly bring him back. It depends on what I feel like once we get to the offseason and once I take a more detailed look at our roster, but right now, he's just a utility infielder field out. He's moving around at second and third base right now, while since we traded Brandon Phillips. So second base is just basically a mix of Gonzalez and Garcia, and then Leedy, Garcia, and Gonzalez are all kind of moving around at third base as well. And then there was the Nick Markakis trade, which we sent Markakis to the Seattle Mariners in return for relief pitcher Nick Vincent. So Nick Vincent is our closer now, as you guys are well aware. You've seen him in I believe the past 2 episodes he's been the closer. He is a 79 overall, C potential, 30 years old. Now, he's not exactly the youngest guy out there, but Nick Markakis didn't really have much value. It was pretty much, I tried to get some prospects for him, but there's a new thing in this year's trading where you can put these prospects in there and it'll be like the team is super interested in definitely interested in making a trade, and you're like, sweet, and then you send the trade through and they're like, we're not interested in this at this time, and it's like, well, you just said you're definitely interested. And that was never a thing until this season, so that's a new thing you have to work around. I'm pretty sure it's because they just didn't want Markakis' contract and giving up prospects, so it was more of just like a kind of a swap talents thing. And then plus, Markakis, he was on a 2-year deal, trying to just dump on the contract for Nick Vincent, who we're going to have to re-sign because he's on a 1-year deal, but I'm confident he's not going to want too much money, and we're going to be able to re-sign him. And plus, why he's the closer and not Medlin, he has the quirk that he performs better in the 9th inning and later, so if he has that 9th inning quirk, might as well put him in the closer spot. And now moving on to the Brandon Phillips trade, which we sent him to the Cleveland Indians in return for Kyle Crockett, left-handed relief pitcher. He's a 76 overall. He's just the guy who more stacking up that bullpen. He's a good lefty to have in the bullpen. He is still under team control, so we're not going to have to re-sign him. We could give him arbitration, but we're probably going to give him a multi-year contract. He is going to be in the bullpen next year as well as finishing out the season in our bullpen. And then there's Roberto Perez, who is going to be backing up John Ryan Murphy. Our catcher depth is pretty suspect, especially since we traded away Kurt Suzuki and Tyler Flowers. So our catching position has really turned a lot since the beginning of the season, when we had Tyler Flowers and Kurt Suzuki. Now we have John Ryan Murphy starting and Roberto Perez backing him up. So Perez going to be backing up Murphy. I mean, if Murphy struggles, Perez can go right in there. If Perez struggles, then Murphy's going right back in. But, I mean, right now the set is to have Murphy starting and Perez backing him up. Perez's contract is a bit questionable. It's a multi-year contract. He's only making like $2 million per each of the years that he has on his contract. But it's still a bit questionable. He's not the youngest of guys out there. And he's not really the typical, the backup guy I would want, but I mean, he's definitely a guy who's serviceable at the catcher position, so we can fill in there. He's going to be our backup catcher next season, possibly, and maybe a couple seasons down the line, he could be a package in a trade, but right now, he is our backup catcher with Murphy being the starter. And then also in that trade, we picked up Austin Jackson, who's more of just a one-year rental. He has 1 year left on his contract. He's a great fielder, good contact hitter. He's just going to be a guy who's filling in all around the outfield as guys get tired the rest of this season, as Hernandez is playing right field, Inciarte obviously in center, and then Matt Kemp in left. So whenever a guy gets tired, Austin Jackson is taking that guy's spot in the lineup that day. And like I said, he's on a 1 year contract. Probably not going to re-sign him. It's very, very, very unlikely that I'm going to re-sign him. He was just more of a dump off the contract thing, because Brandon Phillips, once again, same deal with Markakis. He's a much higher overall than Markakis. You would think he'd have more value, but once again, he's that guy who has the value, the trade value. You put prospects in for him, they're like, we're definitely interested. You offer the trade, and they're like, we're not interested. So that's just a thing I had to deal with, work around, find a trade that would work for me, and that was the one I could find that I think that was the best results for us. And then there was a little minor trade we did where we sent Kurt Suzuki and Jim Johnson in a package deal to the Toronto Blue Jays in return for minor league starting pitcher Glenn Sparkman, who's a 73 overall, C potential. I think he's a possible MLB starter in 2018. He's actually up right now. We'll get into that a bit later, but I think he's definitely going to be a part of our 2018 Major League rotation. And then we also traded for Joe Biagini and John Stilson, two relief pitchers. Biagini is in the major leagues right now. He's more of a long reliever, middle relief type guy. He has a lot more stamina than a typical reliever. I think he might have even been starting for the Blue Jays because he has pretty high innings pitched number, but for us, he's going to be in the middle relief role. He's kind of got rocked this season in his ERA, but we're hoping he's going to turn that around because he is planning to have him as part of our bullpen next season as well. While John Stilson, he could also be a part of our bullpen next season. He's a 69 overall, same as Biagini. Basically, these guys are just bullpen depth. Our bullpen heading into the season was just god-awful, and I did not want to have that type of bullpen heading into next season where I'm trying to compete way more than we did this year. And now taking a look at how the team is doing, Matt Kemp and Freddie Freeman both made the All-Star game. Kemp was in left field, Freeman was at first base, and then Freeman, I feel like every time we go over the league leaders, it's just to see how Freddie Freeman's doing, because it's pretty much that. He's hitting second in the league in average, 323, second in hits with 123, third in home runs with 28 ding-dongs, sixth in RBI with 68 of those. His on-base percentage is good enough for fourth in the National League with a 414. His slugging percentage is second with a 598, just behind Giancarlo Stanton. And then his OPS is also just behind Giancarlo Stanton. That is a 1.012 for second in the National League. And as far as how our team is performing, just some quick little stats. We are third in all of the major leagues in average. So our team is good at getting on base with the contact hitting, but we don't really hit too many home runs. There's still a few things we need to improve on heading into next year. We're 10th in runs, so we do score a decent amount of runs. I would like to improve that a bit, though. 6th in hits. We do a good job getting those. And then we're just 21st in stolen bases, which I've said multiple times. I like to have a team that's fast, can run the bases, steal bases left and right. That's not what this team is. We're going to do our best at changing that. Hernandez, he's speedy in right field. He's going to probably help change that a bit. Ozzy Albies, when he comes up next season, he's definitely a guy who can contribute in stolen bases. Same with Zach Granite, the guy we traded for in the John Ryan Murphy trade. And then we do have 3 key injuries to go over, one of them being Julio Teheran, who's been injured for a while now. He only has 2 to 3 weeks left on his dislocated shoulder. He'll be back sometime in this season. Bartolo Colon went down in the month of July. He's out for 1 to 2 months. That's a fractured hand. He's probably, if he comes back, it'll probably be sometime in September, I think. And then Anthony Recker, who was our AAA catcher, he has also been hurt. He has a 1 to 2 months left on his fractured shin. So once again, he's same as Colon. If he comes back, it'll be like mid-late September, and there's really no point in bringing him back at that point. So Recker, he was our guy who, if any of our catchers got hurt, he's the guy who's getting called up to be our backup catcher. But right now, that's not an option because he is hurt, so Alex Jackson has actually been called to the AAA, but we'll go over that a bit later. And then if we take a look at our pitching rotation, Aaron Blair's been pitching really well. He's 0-2, but he has a 2.76 ERA. Matt Wisler, he's 2-1 with a 3.64. R.A. Dickey's starting to pitch pretty well. He's 6-7, 3.70 ERA. You can't really ask for much more than a knuckleball pitcher. Fultonavich is 6-7 with a 4.14 ERA, and then Glenn Sparkman has actually been called up because of the Cologne and Tehran injuries, so Sparkman is going to be the number 5 starter, and he is yet to play. He will be making his first start in the first episode you see for the month of August. And then in the bullpen, Biagini, he's 9-4, 96 innings pitched, 5.04 ERA. Like I said, his numbers are a bit inflated. I think he might have even been in rotation in Toronto, but he's a middle reliever for us. He's still going to be there despite his ERA. I'm confident next year he could lower that. And then there's Kyle Crockett, who for whatever reason was in the minor leagues for the Indians. He's 8 innings pitched with a 3.24 ERA so far. Vizcaíno in 33 2/3. He has 39 strikeouts and a 3.48 ERA. And then there's Medlin, who has in 46 innings pitched, a 2.5 ERA. He's now the setup guy and not the closer. And then Vincent is in the closer spot with a 3.32 ERA and a .68 whip. And now if we take a look around the minor leagues, Ozzie Albies, like I keep mentioning, he's going to be the everyday second baseman next season in 2018. He got off to a very rough start to the season. He was hitting under 200. He's definitely improved on that since. I'm confident he's going to be the everyday second baseman next year. He's up to a 72 overall A potential. Rio Ruiz is a guy who could be the starting third baseman next year. He's not set in stone like Albies is as a starter, but he could possibly be the third baseman next season. He's 69 overall B potential right now. Zach Granite, he's a possible 4th outfielder next year. He's not going to be starting unless Teoscar Hernandez completely shits the bed and Granite will play right field, or unless we sign somebody. But right now he's a possible 4th outfielder option in 2019. And then, like I mentioned, Alex Jackson has been called up to AAA just recently. There's not really many numbers to go over. Anthony Recker got hurt, so now he's the AAA catcher. And then Colby Allard, one of our top prospects, has been dominating AA, so we called him up to AAA to see how he performs there. He'll finish the year in AAA. So with that being said, it's going to wrap things up here for this edition of the Atlanta Braves Franchise Monthly Recap for the month of July, heading into the month of August. I've been your host, Jerseyborn, and I'm saying goodbye.
Hello, I've waited here for you ever long. Tonight I throw myself into